My name's Melinda Marsh, and I'm reintroducing myself from yesterday. We all went around and said who we were and how we were a part of this LHON community. And I'm going to start tonight or today with a little bit about my journey. So as you already know, I have 3 sons, 1 affected and 2 who are carriers, just as I am. Xavier was diagnosed in September. And I would say, arguably, everyone in this room has a connection to Lissa, and that's one of the reasons that we're all in this room. And I was spiraling in September. What do you mean I have this mitochondrial DNA mutation? What on earth are you talking about? What do you mean, my son, there is no cure? What? And Lissa reached out after my request to join the Facebook group and said, hey, can we meet offline? I'd love to talk to you. She gave me 3 hours of her Sunday, having never met me and never experienced. We weren't friends. We didn't even know each other's names prior to that conversation. And she talked me off that ledge. She brought me to a point of, I'm so grateful to have had this LHON community that Lissa worked so hard to establish, to have that network to lean on and to figure out supports for Xavier and for the rest of my family. And from there, how do I take that gratitude and pay it forward? And that's why I'm here today. And I'd like to introduce my husband, Chris, as well.
You held that together much better than when you practiced it.
I did.
This is an emotional journey without a doubt. And with that whirlwind of emotions that I think Melinda just described, we as 2 type A individuals went immediately into action. And upon diagnosis, we were fortunate to have some friends in the life science community that were able to get us a diagnosis in about 48 hours, where we know in so many cases it takes much, much longer. And in the ensuing weeks and months, we're sure there was a fix out there. So we had Xavier enrolled as a patient in Los Angeles and Miami and in London, and just knew we needed to turn over that next rock we just hadn't found. Sound familiar? And in so many cases, while that fix is perhaps elusive still, what we've learned is what an incredible network of talented people exists in the research community and need your help, need our help to actually bring down some of the walls and some of the obstacles. And so that's what we wanted to talk with you about, is how to actually launch a data collection program for LHON that we think can do exactly that.
So prior to September, if somebody had said the words medical registry to me in that order, I would have looked at them blankly and had no idea what they were speaking about. And just in case any of you are in the same boat that I was in, a data collection program or a registry, medical registry, this is a systematic collection of that standardized data, our data as LHON community individuals. It captures that information about each rare disease, including LHON communities' symptoms, whether it's vision loss and in addition to vision loss. And then it facilitates getting that information in the hands of clinicians, biopharma, medical researchers, and so on, so that that can be moved forward towards clinical trials and studies to develop those effective treatments. And I'll add that as Chris and I were hunting for the elusive cure, and we met all these clinicians, everyone said, they then introduced us to biopharma partners that we then followed up with and became friends with. And as we continued to meet individuals in the LHON space on the medical profession side, what kept being, how would you say, honed in on and hammered into our brains was, you have this amazing community, this support network. Her name is Lissa Poinsano. What we need from you as the LHON community is a quality medical registry so we can move forward with these great ideas to possible and very probable treatments in the near future.
So we recognize that a lot of data is out there. And so I think it's really important just to understand what are we trying to accomplish incrementally. Across the board, I think it's fair to say that data exists in silos. You know, when we flew down to Miami, we had a chance to meet with the Bascom Palmer folks, and those of you with 11778 certainly would be familiar with some of their attempts and their trials. But it wouldn't surprise you that that data isn't available to other research institutions, much less like the learnings behind it to actually build on in an effective way. Not nearly as effective as it should be. And so the idea of building this this new sort of data collection platform is really to create something that is accessible, but also representative of all of what's represented in this room. And I think the last 2 hours of conversations and symptoms that go way beyond just simply a single diagnosis. And so as Melinda and Lissa and I went out and spoke with various data collection platforms that are out there, you know, there were a few very core principles we were looking for. And we think we found a platform that can do exactly that in terms of making things more accessible, more structured, and more comprehensively representative of our community.
I'd love to talk about the beta testing. So we here up on this stage aren't going to ask you to do something that we haven't already done ourselves and had some proof in the pudding that it works. So when all of these medical professionals said to me as I was meeting through Zoom in person and so on, that this medical registry is a key next step. I said, okay, fine, I'll register everywhere under the sun. I don't care if it's in English, I will do it. And so I did just that. And I found a lot of gaps in those medical registries that I went forward and registered Xavier as an affected member, myself as a carrier, if they would take my information. And I kept looking and I came finally to RareX. And they have a very different approach than simply a static, potentially upload your genetic report, potentially don't. Maybe they have LHON in the dropdown, maybe they don't, etc. And what RareX did that differentiated themselves was they have this head to toe approach. And I reached out to Lissa and said, I think I found something unique. And so then Lissa and I went in and tested it ourselves. And they ask everything from your vision loss to your migraines, to muscles, to your heart, to everything from the top of your head to the bottom of your toes. And what that does is it gives us in the LHON community a whole picture for those researchers to access, to understand our DNA, mitochondrial DNA mutation. And so we've gone to a beta test only as of last week with a very small subset of LHON community participants, just to confirm that what I think is an awesome opportunity ends up being an awesome opportunity for others within our community. And assuming that their response is also positive, we want to then roll this out to the greater LHON community, not only here in the United States, but internationally, because as has been shared in many different sessions here with UMDF, as well as in this room, LHON doesn't understand borders. And so there's no reason that we should keep this proprietary to our borders as well. So the next slide are about our goals. Our goals here are to create a robust database. We need a large number of participants to create a quality set of information that can be used by those researchers. In addition, this has the potential to reduce the time it takes to study those new medicines and to promote possibly the development of new assistive devices.
I'll touch on just a little bit on the collaboration point. And those of you who were here yesterday heard from Carmen Trupik as she described a little bit of what RareX is doing and how important collaboration is. The key things that I would mention on simplifying this slide down is that we're talking about what you're experiencing, what our families are experiencing, and an aggregate picture of symptoms, not just a specific diagnosis. The collaboration that can come from that really fosters a cross-disease, cross-diagnosis type of approach to really understanding what's going on. And I think a really important piece is that they're not trying to replace other studies. One of the key elements that Lissa and Melinda and I emphasized when talking with RareX was the importance of partnership with MitoShare, so that we're not creating things that are redundant. What we're actually doing is creating multiple access points and abilities to query the underlying data and actually make it relevant to the researchers. So why is this going to help us with researchers? Well, at the end of the day, if we can reduce some of the obstacles that researchers face, we become a greater priority for them. Let's just be very blunt about it. They have lots of options where to spend time and energy. If we can actually reduce obstacles, we become a priority. And in addition to that, there's some really amazing ways to harness the data science that's out there. Again, if we start to think horizontally, not just by vertical or by silo. And so one of the most fascinating parts is not just what RareX has today, but where they're going. They've created a partnership with the Broad Institute. If you're familiar with that, it's a joint venture between MIT and Harvard data scientists to actually look at it from an algorithmic data standpoint, to turn data into actual information that can target efforts going forward. And that we think has benefits not only to researchers, but to all of us as a community.
So we're going to move on to us as a community. What are our benefits to being a part of this DCP, data collection program? The obvious main benefit is the access to those clinical trials that any one of us may be potentially appropriate to participate in. In addition, though, this also has the possibility of speeding up research and drug development, as Chris just mentioned. And it will also give us, as we have a greater number of participants enter their information and keep it updated as your symptoms change or your vision improves, for example, or you experience a migraine, et cetera, and the list goes on. The ability to receive updates on those disease commonalities that we may experience within our LHON community to better understand ourselves, what we share in common. So the last stage here is who can enroll. And this gets down to the nitty gritty here. Obviously, anyone affected with LHON that is traditionally understood as anyone experiencing vision loss. In addition, though, just as the genetic counselor was mentioning earlier today, anyone who is known or presumed to have an LHON mutation, even if we don't have vision loss, commonly referred to as LHON carriers, such as myself, such as my sons, Danny and Sean, we all carry that LHON mutation, and we are important to that overall research. So as we roll this out, it will be very important for not just those considered to be in that affected category, but those in the carrier status to also participate. Anyone with a diagnosis of LHON plus. And lastly, anyone who is deceased but known or presumed to carry that LHON mutation. So my mother, who's passed away, would be appropriate to enter. She did not lose her vision, but she had other what would be considered, as I'm now learning, LHON plus symptoms. And at the time I had no idea. I didn't even know LHON existed. So thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate all that you've given us as a community. We are so lucky to be here today and to have this opportunity to make these connections and these friends. And we want to work together to see what may be possible in the very near future.